Lonneke Löwik, you are Chief Executive Officer at INREV. Thank you for joining us on BiTV.
Good morning, Luke. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. INREV has recently published a new paper on digitalization and tokenization technologies in real estate. How are the advent of these new technologies solution influencing the business of property investors?
Well, it's a big change. If we look at our industry generates a lot of data, involves a lot of parties in every process. And digitalization and new technology solution offer a wide range of benefits to the industry. Technology can improve the underwriting and investment decisions. If you think of building and consumer produces more and more data, and more data, even more granular data, offer great value during the due diligence process when evaluating the investment opportunity. And technological solutions have the potential to improve the accuracy of these underwriting assumptions and investment decisions. But technological solutions also have the potential to drive value through the investment process. If you think about starting with the administrative efficiency, investments into private commercial real estate is still a very lengthy process, and as said before, involving many players, such as lawyers, agencies, who all add time and cost to the transaction process. Investors, when you're investing into the industry, have to complete a lot of paperwork, such as know your customer or money laundering, and all of this process is being performed manually. And technology can help to streamline this onboarding process. And if we look at sourcing of capital and investment opportunities, we see digital platforms emerging that have the potential to drive greater transparency and make it more accessible to small investors. So if you look at these digital platforms, that can be described as a trading platform that brings buyers and sellers together of properties, the finance of real estate, or funds. You think of crowdfunding platforms, secondary trading platforms, but also tokenization of real estate.
And speaking of tokenization, more specifically, what are the main benefits of tokenization for the real estate sector in general and investment managers in particular?
Yeah, let me quickly first see, what is tokenization? Just
yes, thank you.
1 second. If you look at tokenization, that is the representation of valuable assets. If you think about real estate, it could be one asset or a building or funds in a digital and fractional form. The ownership and the growth and income rights associated with the ownership, say, of this fund unit, are instead represented using a digital token. And these tokens carry a set of digitalized and self-executing instructions known as smart contracts. And this has the potential to increase significantly the administrative efficiency gains, to reduce transaction costs and improve the transaction time and liquidity, and ultimately potential to open up new sources of capital. So let me explain each of this in a bit more detail. So first, if we look at the administrative efficiency, as I said before, this onboarding of clients is a lengthy process involving many players. And by using these tokenized smart contracts, all onboarding requirements are already predefined and performed before using any transaction can take place. And this will take place in a much smarter way, quicker, with less people involved. And these smart contracts not only have this pre-requirement before you can do any transaction, they also have all the product terms and conditions, which have been digital construction to make the transaction fully automated. So the entire process from the onboarding to complete transaction is fully automated, and with that increasing the speed and at lower cost. And what is really interesting about this is that through this whole process, you can trade whole and fractional amounts in a cost-efficient way, though it makes it also easy for small investors to enter the real estate market. So you could say it democratizes the private real estate sector and bring it into kind of the public market. And with that, what is also interesting to say, one other benefit that it could bring, that has potential to bring, is to bring more transparency, because this whole process is on a platform, giving all participants and service providers involved the same data at the same time. And as you can see, that increases transparency, and by this automated process reduces cost, increases speed, and as such also improves then the liquidity.
And in light of all these benefits, what does the real estate sector need for such practices to be more widely embraced?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting because, as you said, we indeed published the paper a few months ago, but we also held a seminar on the back of this, and we asked our members, what are the biggest hurdle for the industry for tokenization to really take off, and their answer was on first, regulations. Capital investment second, pricing is an issue, and critical mass is essential to really take off. So if you look at regulations, the tokenization is a legally very complex process, and it varies across jurisdictions. Some of the jurisdictions have already been far advanced and are they ready for these products, while others are still working through some guidelines and statements. And what was interesting during the seminar, there was a discussion on if you trade through existing platforms or stock exchanges that, of course, need to adapt to the new digital world. But if you do that, you could trade within existing legal structures and it should not be complicated. While other people think that these traditional infrastructures do not allow these new sectors to join and that we need new platforms. And for that, you need new regulation. So it's an interesting discussion. But what's clear about both of them that one way or the other, what would work, we need critical mass. It's still small, and I'll come back to it in a moment. But the other thing that is very important, of course, the industry need to make investments. The investment companies, they need to make investments to make sure you have the technical and legal skills and the system in order. But also everybody, all the parties involved, I said there are many parties involved, need to be fully up to speed. So also the fund and administration to the systems need to be making investments. And one other thing, and that was debated as well in the panel, is the issue on how to deal with pricing. Because you kind of the lines between the private and public market is starting to blur, and it will have an impact on the pricing as well. So normally when you trade, it's the fund NAV. But of course, when you trade through a tokenization, there is some reflection of sentiment. And as I said, there was a debate during the discussion that expected for trading to still be happening around the fund NAV because it will correct itself. But of course, there is some sentiment. But so it's an interesting one, and there was not clear answer, but it's an issue to overcome. Certainly, if you think that there are funds that are partly tokenized, so you have non-tokenized part of the funds trading at NAV and part of being tokenized. So that's an interesting discussion. But what I just said, partly tokenized funds, and that links to the critical mass, because at the moment most of the funds don't have the right documentation to get this done. So you need to unpick the documentation for existing products. So it's relatively easy to do it with new funds. And we know that trading has been happening, but to really have it off the market, existing products need to be reviewed. And of course, you need to have a critical mass for it to be liquid, as being one of the advances of tokenization. So basically, all in all, what I would say about tokenization is that we do expect that this administrative easing, so that will happen first because it's quite tangible and relevant to everybody and much more easy to apply, while the full tokenization that could potentially open up to new investors, increase the whole liquidity, etc. We're still a way out, but I'm convinced it will happen. But it still takes some time, and it might not be relevant for all investors, but definitely will have a major impact on the future of our industry.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this insight, and thank you all for joining us. See you soon on BiTV.